Well, let's watch the progression from DOS to Windows so that we can sort of see where the beginning and the end of DOS were. So this is sort of the evolution of DOS. In 1980, remember the 86 DOS by Tim Patterson that we talked about in the last video. And then we also mentioned in the last video that in 81 PC-DOS 1 was licensed to IBM. Now Microsoft kept that PC-DOS name through several iterations. Each of these iterations was just an improvement on something, and over here on the side I have what it was an improvement for. For example, double-sided floppies came out, and so we had to upgrade from a 1.0 to a 1.1 in order to handle those floppies. PC-DOS 2 then was the first one in 1983 to handle hard disk drives. In let's see, 83 2.1 we began to see disk drives that were half height. Rather than taking up what was about 2 inches or so, these smaller drives were only about half an inch high, or maybe less than 1 inch high anyway, maybe 3/4 of an inch. 1984 we made a major upgrade, and that's to PC-DOS 3 for larger disks. And then 3.1 added network support. This was really a major version of DOS because of that networking. And this is about the time that Windows began to appear, the very earliest versions of Windows, the 1.x versions. And then 3.5-inch floppies came out, so we had to upgrade DOS again to 3.2. And then those double density 3.5-inch floppies had something like 1.44 megabytes. And so we had to upgrade again to 3.3, and now Windows 2 was beginning to make its appearance. Most people don't remember Windows 1 and Windows 2. They weren't real popular at the time. 1987, DOS 3.31, hard disk partitions over 32 megabytes. So hard disks were beginning to grow a little bit now and get over the into the 30, 40, 50, 60 megabyte size. 1991, DOS 5. In this one, we added some editing capability and some programming capability, and this is when the Windows 3 began to become popular. This is the point at which most of us that have been around since the beginning of Windows remember. Windows 3.1 was the big one. And at that same time, Microsoft had put out this MS-DOS 5, and Windows 3.1 was really just a shell on top of DOS. You had to actually install DOS first, and then install Windows as an add-on application on DOS. 1993 then was really the beginning of the end, because 6.21 was the last Microsoft DOS ever put out. 6.0 we began to allow some compression, and Windows 3.2 was now running on top of 6.0. 6.2 we improved this double space compression, and so it just made it a little more efficient basically. And then in 1993 we very quickly had to add a 6.2.1 because Microsoft got caught red-handed, or at least the courts decided that they had stolen the code, some of the code for double space, so they made them quit. MS-DOS 6.22 is the very last version, and in this case this double space compression had been replaced with Microsoft's own code for drive space compression. And then this is about the time that our Windows NT was introduced. Now, even after this point, Windows 95, Windows 98 were still DOS based, but they were based on this MS-DOS 6. And then finally, in Windows 2000, Windows XP, we began true NT based, which meant that there was no underlying DOS any longer. So this is our transition period right through here, 1993 to 98 range, when we began to see that transition from DOS to a true Windows, or a Windows NT, which was no longer just loaded on top of DOS.